Okay, this next shot, forgive that it's home movies, but the reason I want to show this because it's a problem shot. Okay, so the problem is that the baby is kind of dark and we have these really bright lights in the background. So obviously I wouldn't have shot this like that if it was a professional shoot, but this is what I want to use as a good example. And so if I tried to bring up his brightness, if I applied Lumetri to this clip. I'm going to undo that so I can see what I did. I just applied it to this clip, and now I have Lumetri in my effects control window here. So if I just tried to use the basic one and I increased, let's say, the exposure a little bit, you can see, like, you can also see in its native form, these lights up here are crushed, and you can see that over here. Okay, so there's nothing I can do to improve that. I can bring down the brightness level of it. So maybe if I went into the highlights and brought it down a little bit, I can decrease that brightness there, which isn't actually that bad. But you'll see that there are areas where there's zero information, like it's just solid white, and you'll never get anything in there other than solid white, and that's fine. But I brought down the brightness level, and that's kind of good. But it also affected the kid's face, and so that's a problem. So how would you work around that? So I'm going to go ahead and reset that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. Okay, so let's say I go under, I'm going to duplicate this layer by taking another instance of this clip, and I'm going to put it on top of it. So I've got two of the exact same clips sitting right on top of each other, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mask. Okay, so how I'm going to do this mask is I'm going to do it like this. I select this layer. I'm going to maybe select this pen tool, and I'm going to just kind of click around the kid. And let's say I'm going to now actually undo that. If I take around this, I'm going to select the pen tool. I'm going to say, I'm going to auto roto Bezier. So what that does is it kind of creates curves for me already, so I don't have these harsh lines. So that's a good tool to have. And so with that active, you don't see anything happening here because beneath this layer is the exact same thing. So if I turn off the visibility of the layer beneath it, you can actually see what I just did. So this is the mask that I created, and you can kind of see that mask right here. It's labeled mask number 1. Okay, and so what I'm going to do with that one, though, is I want to make sure that I feather the mask, so I'm not going to see a hard line, but I'll do that later so you understand what I mean by that. Okay, so on this layer, I'm going to rename it, Okay, I'm going to call this boy mask layer. And this one down here, I'm going to just rename as no mask. And both of them will get layers, will get effects applied to them. But right now I want to just work on this one. So with this layer selected, I'm going to apply the Lumetri color to that layer. Okay, so now I'm just working on improving the look of this particular layer. All right, so let's start out with basic, and let's say I want to do what I did earlier, and I want to increase the brightness level. So again, we can try starting out with the curves. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a couple of dots. I'll do 3 dots for now. And I'm going to try to increase the brightness of the child's face. And I'm not going to go, I'm going to bring down, I'm looking down here on the scope, and the black level is looking okay there. And the brightness level, this right here represents this stuff over here. So this is kind of where the kid's face lives. All right, so if I want to bring up the brightness of that mid-range there, I can do that way. Okay, and now he's looking a little red too, right? So I can come in here and take the red and kind of bring down the red just a little bit. You know, these are usually pretty subtle changes. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And I can always come up to the layer and just kind of turn it on and off to kind of see what it looked like before, because it's very, when you do color correction, it's kind of difficult to kind of remember what it looked like originally. So it's important to kind of click on and off the effect button here so that you can see the difference, okay? And then let's see what else we got going on here. Let's go to, maybe I want to see if I kind of give it a little bit more green. I want his face to look a little bit more natural. That didn't help too much. A lot of this is trial and error. And so I'm going to kind of go with that for now as far as his face is concerned, okay? But now let's go back and turn this layer on so we can kind of see it. And if this is irritating you so you can't really see, you don't want to see this line here, this little button here will allow you to turn, you know, it's still there, this mask line, but like this allows you to see, like, you know, you can see this hard line, and that's not really acceptable. So that's where I'm going to go back under mask. I'm going to go under feather, and I don't need to animate this, so I'm not going to turn on the stopwatch, but I'm going to feather out that mask line so that I don't have that, you don't see it, okay? So it looks a lot better that way. All right, so now I want to affect the bottom layer because I had these really hot spots over there. So now what I'm going to do is, oh, by the way, you have this is audio here. So like if you have two of these are going to double up. So you only want to have one of these. If you're bringing the audio in with it, then you could choose to either turn off the audio or just have one of these things with audio. I'm going to turn it off because I don't care about the audio for this. All right, and so now I'm going to take Lumetri and I'm going to apply it to the bottom layer. And in this instance, I'm going to turn off. Actually, I'm going to leave that one on, and then I make sure that this layer is selected. I'm in the effects control window, and I want to kind of, let's start out with curves again. I have 3 instances of these, so let's get rid of this. Okay, so here's my Lumetri. Let me do that again. So I'm going to take Lumetri, and I'm going to drop it onto this bottom layer. Don't drop it onto here because you got to make sure you're dropping it on the correct layer. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mess around with this. Let's start out with, I think curves is probably the best tool for me at this point. So if I just kind of bring this down, you can kind of see that I'm taking sort of the hotness off of the background, and what this does is it causes the viewer to focus in on the child. So if I'm going to turn this on and off, so you can kind of see what it looks like before and after. And I'm paying attention that my black level is not below 0. And if it looks a little hot, like if something is peaking at 100, it's a good idea to just kind of bring the overall brightness down. So I'm going to go to basic here. And I'm going to just say on the exposure, I'm just going to bring it down just a little bit so that it's not sitting right at the very top of at 100. Okay, and so now I've got a shot that looks pretty good, you know, considering where we started with. So like if you want to see where we started, this is, I'm going to turn off all the effects. So this is kind of where we started with, right? And so now this is what we're working with. And I think this is a much nicer shot. It looks a lot better now. So this is kind of what I want you to work with.